Hi, I'm Matt Williamson. I've got 5 great bands for you today. They are all British, they are all obscure, and they are all psychedelic. Let's give them a listen here on Pop Goes the 60s. So the psychedelic music movement really kicked into high gear in 1967 after Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. Also at that time in England there was a huge turntable hit with A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procol Harum. Now, just prior to this, the record label Decca, which was a pretty conservative label, even though they had the Rolling Stones, they came up with a subsidiary label that was more experimental called Deram. And some of these new psychedelic bands they were going to showcase on this label. So the bands that we're going to look at today are all from the Decca stable. So the first band I want to talk about is called the Cherry Smash. And they only had 3 singles. One in 67, one in 68, and one in 69. That was it. And some of these bands can be found on this compilation here, the British Psychedelic Trip. This was a compilation that came out in 4 volumes in the late 80s. You can find it also on CD in 3 volumes, I believe. And some of these bands are on these compilations today. So the Cherry Smash was somewhat notable. The brother of Mike Hug from Manfred Mann was in the Cherry Smash, Brian Hug. He was going by the name of Brian Sebastian. And he and Mike Hug wrote some other hit songs. Well, actually they weren't hits. These 3 singles were released, but I think they're really good, and I'm going to give you a sampling of 3 of them. And the soil's dry, but it's hanging on, you know I don't. Men were born to live and die, but they never know the reason why. Goodbye, Maureen. What you plan to do today? Sky's blue, sea is green. So that last one, Fade Away Maureen, great guitar, great crunchy guitar riff, a lot of energy. The song before that, Sing Songs of Love, was a song that was also included on the Manfred Mann soundtrack, Up the Junction. But the version on here was by Manfred Mann. So that was probably the Cherry Smash's biggest claim to fame, was that one of the members was a brother of Mike Hug from Manfred Mann, which in America he's not that well known, but in England he was kind of a big deal. So the next band I have for you is called Ice, and this was another 3-single band, and just 3 45s, never an album. Ice was led by a singer by the name of Glyn James, and they had the background was a little bit more choral and jazzy. So when they started writing songs, it's rather melodic, and as far as psychedelic music is concerned, this is a little bit more mellow, but they've got a couple really wonderful songs. She's gone back home now, and I'm still waiting. Here you go, I can't see, I'm going blind. Ice cream children. So on the song Whisper Her Name, Maria Lane, you can hear it's got a very nice melody. Glyn James is a fine singer. And then on the last song I played, Iceman, that's easily the most psychedelic song, very dreamy. Also a nice melody and some nice instrumentation. So this band, as I said, they didn't record an album, but they did do several radio appearances, particularly on the John Peel Show, where they appeared with the Jimi Hendrix Experience and Traffic. But they couldn't get past that 3rd single. The record company wanted them to go in a direction that they didn't feel was appropriate, and they wanted a little more creative control. A lot of the record companies in those days had them do really corny songs. They didn't understand the psychedelic movement. In many cases, a lot of these, it got really goofy and really corny, and just used very childish lyrics and childish instrumentation, thinking that was going to be both psychedelic and commercial. Well, you can't really, it's hard to do both. And Ice certainly couldn't do both, and didn't, so they ended up breaking up.
2 dozen Martians came down to Earth and landed quite near my house. I am the muffin man, here I am, and you know I can love you if you let me have a muffin now and then you won't forget.
Okay, this next band is probably the holy grail of British psychedelic singles, and this band is called Tintern Abbey. They just had 1 single, and both sides are great. They're just really great slabs of psychedelia. Very mysterious band. This was also on Deram. And I got to give Decca really did a very fine production. And this was produced by Jonathan Weber. I don't know, I haven't seen his name in other credits yet, but I assume he was a Decca house producer. And his work really, he did great work on this record. Both sides are wonderful slabs of psychedelia, nice distorted guitar, and unfortunately this was the only proper recording the band did. In 1968, the second proposed single never materialized, and although today you can find some demos of their '68 work, this is their lone released single. So the next band I have for you are the Poets. And the Poets are unique in this video anyway, because they actually lasted quite a long time, roughly from 1964 to 1970. And although they are considered Scotland's probably greatest band during this time, they hail from Glasgow, they were never able to record an album either. So they had a nice string of 45s along those years. And for a while they were produced by Rolling Stone manager and producer Andrew Loog Oldham. So I'm going to play for you a string of a few of their songs, and they vary in different styles because they cross quite a bit of a long span of time that they were together, but some really great stuff.
Now she's gone, gone, gone. I am so blue.
All right, so the last band I have for you is appropriately called The End. Now, The End has a Stones connection as well. Bill Wyman managed and produced them. And Bill Wyman saw them in a club, and this was in 1967, around the time when the Stones were working on their Satanic Majesty's Request. And he offered to produce them, and they did a couple singles, and then they did a proper album. So this is the only band from today's group that actually recorded an album. That album is called Introspection and was released in 1969. So Wyman actually wrote a couple very nice songs here. I wish he would have written more with the Stones, but here's an example of some of the songs by The End. All right, so those are 5 of what I feel are the top British psychedelic obscure bands of the 60s. Now, I mentioned earlier that these bands can be found on these compilations called the British Psychedelic Trip. There were 4 albums in this series available. The label is C for Miles Records. And excellent, excellent liner notes, very nice information, very detailed. If you can't find the albums, the LPs, you can find, I believe it's a series of 3 CDs. The CDs have more tracks on them, so I think that's why there's only 3 CDs available. But I'm sure you can find these and pick these up. All the same liner notes and same information, and very good stuff. I hope you found these obscure bands interesting, and I hope you search them out. They're not too hard to find if you look hard enough. If you like those, there's a lot more videos coming, so make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the little bell so you can be notified when I have a new video that comes out. See you next time here on Pop Goes the 60s.